WebEx, Senator Duckworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm so glad to hear my colleague just across the border from Illinois agree that we do need an independent that we do need a look into the long-term decisions as well as the immediate decisions that were made with regards to Afghanistan. Mr. Jocelyn, on a recent podcast, you discussed the need to examine the decisions over the past 20 years that led to the failure in Afghanistan, and you stressed the importance of that accountability. I couldn't agree with you more. You criticized government leaders at multiple echelons and agencies for the outcomes in Afghanistan, and you critiqued presidential decision-making going all the way back to the 1990s, including missed opportunities to decimate al-Qaeda immediately following the 9/11 attacks. Mr. Jocelyn, would you agree that decisions made by the Department of Defense, the Department of State, the White House, members of Congress, and the intelligence community all contributed to the failure we've seen in Afghanistan?
No question, Senator. I heard you on Tuesday when you called for your own commission. I don't know what the status of that is in terms of the bill you introduced to examine over 20 years. I would say that it's probably even more than 20 years of decision-making going back to the 1990s, but I wholeheartedly endorse the effort to understand the long-term ramifications of one bad decision after another. What I suggest going forward is that we always keep clear minds about what the decision is that's in front of our leaders, and they make a clear decision. My number one critique of the war in Afghanistan is that it seems to me like the decision making was not clear at any point in time.
I couldn't agree with you more, and that's why I think that my proposal for an independent commission, I served on the Benghazi committee. That was bipartisan, but highly political. I think we need a clear-eyed look at what happened and all the bad decisions along the way, and all the times that military leaders and commanders on the ground were not listened to. Look at the corruption, all of that, poor practices by DOD, poor practices by state. Given all of these failures, the persistent threat of terrorism, and the blood and treasure expended in this conflict, what is the importance in your mind of capturing the hard lessons learned from the war in Afghanistan so that future policymakers and warfighters can avoid a similar fate?
I probably can't answer that in the time that I've got. All I can say is I think Senator King and a few others here has started to get at what I think is the core issue, which is that when America is fighting insurgencies or in a counterinsurgency posture against insurgency warfare, whether it be in Vietnam or Iraq and Afghanistan, these are incredibly difficult, complex fights. My view is that America should not provoke them, should not get involved in an area where we don't need to be. We have to be very careful about getting involved in any kind of counterinsurgency warfare. It's costly. And as you're saying, Senator, America doesn't know what it's doing oftentimes. If you listen to my testimony today, this is what I want anybody to take away from it. The one thing that we should have gotten right was Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, and they didn't get it right. This is the most basic part of all this. So to my mind, I think when it comes to, I think unfortunately the jihadis are organized as insurgents. That's their main goal. Senator Manchin quoted me from 2014. That's always been their main posture. Al-Qaeda is an insurgency organization. We just have to be very careful about what resources we devote to fighting it and where.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I have to say, an independent commission with leaders who were not in a decision-making position in those 20 years, I think that's an important component of it, to keep it completely nonpartisan so that we can have a hard, clear-eyed look. Because in my opinion, and I don't know if you agree with this, but internal lessons learned, the AARs that everybody conducts, the internal lessons learned exercises conducted by a single agency like DOD, I don't think is sufficient to capture the total scope of the decisions that we need to analyze from the 20-year war in Afghanistan. I think we have to look overall. Yes, we're going to have a look at procurement and contracting, and we're going to look at State Department decisions and DOD decisions. But I think we need an overall look across the whole span. Would you agree with me that just a single internal department within our government look at itself, is that going to be sufficient if it's just DOD looking at the decisions that it's made?
It's absolutely not sufficient. What you're calling for, Senator, is accountability. Accountability has been sorely lacking over the last 20-plus years for poor decisions that were made. I think that we need to start looking at foreign policy and war fighting and all these related issues through metrics of accountability. I've often said, look, if I were ever in a government position and I screw up, I want to be held accountable. I want people to know. I want to admit that I screwed up. And you hear some little inklings of accountability from the generals on Tuesday, but not enough for my purposes. Not enough to actually explain what actually happened here. There are too many examples I can give you of things that went wrong over the last 20 years and for which there was no accountability. So I applaud your cry for some sort of accountability here.
Thank you. And I will submit additional questions for the record, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Senator Duckworth. Let me now recognize Senator Rosen via WebEx.
Thank you, Chairman Reed, Ranking Member Inhofe, for holding this hearing. Thank you for the witnesses for testifying here today. And I appreciate the opportunity